The ad had called it charming, a historic gem, nestled in the heart of the city, offering old-world tranquility. For me, Sarah, fresh out of a draining relationship and a soul-crushing job, it sounded like a sanctuary. Apartment 3B, in the weathered brick building on Elm Street, was exactly what I needed. High ceilings, original hardwood floors, and a bay window overlooking a quiet, tree-lined street. It was affordable too, almost suspiciously so for its prime location. Moving in was a blur of cardboard boxes and cheap takeout. The first few days were peaceful, filled with the satisfying sounds of unpacking and the gentle creaks of an old building settling. I loved the way the morning light streamed through the bay window, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. The neighbors seemed quiet, almost too quiet. I'd occasionally hear faint footsteps above or muffled conversations from next door, but nothing intrusive. It was exactly the quiet I craved. Then the whispers started. Faint at first, barely audible, like the rustle of leaves outside my window or the distant murmur of traffic. But they were inside. I'd be reading or cooking, and a fleeting sound, like a breathy sigh or a hushed word, would brush against my ear. I'd pause, listen intently, but it would vanish, leaving only the familiar silence of my apartment. I blamed the old pipes, the settling foundation, the wind playing tricks. My mind, I reasoned, was still adjusting to the quiet after years of city noise and emotional turmoil. I was just being jumpy. The whispers grew more distinct, though never quite clear enough to decipher. They were always just at the edge of my hearing, a maddening, elusive presence. Sometimes it sounded like a child's giggle, soft and innocent, but quickly fading into something more sinister. Other times, it was a low guttural murmur, like a conversation held just out of reach. I started leaving the TV on, even when I wasn't actively watching it, just for the background noise to drown out the phantom sounds. I'd find myself pausing, straining to hear, my heart quickening with an irrational fear. I began to sleep with the lamp on, the soft glow, a small comfort against the encroaching darkness. Then came the cold spots. Patches of air, inexplicably frigid, that would appear in random parts of the apartment. I'd walk through my living room, and suddenly a pocket of icy air would envelop me, raising goosebumps on my arms. It wasn't a draft. My windows were sealed, and the heating was working fine. These were localized, moving pockets of unnatural cold. I tried to rationalize it: faulty insulation, perhaps, or a strange air current. But the cold spots often coincided with the whispers, a chilling combination that made my skin crawl. I started to feel watched, a constant, prickling sensation on the back of my neck, even when I was alone in my apartment. One evening, I was in the kitchen, making dinner, when I heard a distinct thud from the living room. It sounded like something heavy had fallen. My heart leaped into my throat. I slowly walked towards the living room, clutching the kitchen knife like a weapon. The room was dark, save for the faint light spilling from the kitchen. Nothing seemed out of place. My books were still neatly stacked on the shelves, the throw pillows still arranged on the sofa. Then I saw it. A small, antique porcelain doll, one I had inherited from my grandmother, lay face down on the hardwood floor. It had been sitting on the mantelpiece, a good 5 feet from where it had fallen. I felt a cold dread spread through me. It wasn't just my imagination anymore. Something was definitely in my apartment. My attempts at rationalization crumbled. The whispers became clearer, though still fragmented, like snippets of a conversation from another room. I heard my name, sometimes a plea, sometimes a warning. The cold spots intensified, lingering longer, sometimes accompanied by a faint, sweet scent, like decaying flowers. I started to avoid certain areas of the apartment, particularly the living room where the doll had fallen. Sleep became a luxury, punctuated by vivid nightmares of shadowy figures at the foot of my bed, their whispers echoing in my mind even after I woke. I tried to research the building's history, spending hours online, sifting through old newspaper archives and local historical society records. I found snippets: a fire in the late 1800s, a few mentions of tenants who had moved out abruptly, but nothing concrete, nothing that explained the pervasive sense of dread. The landlord was evasive when I subtly brought up the building's age and any past incidents. He just smiled, a little too widely, and assured me the building was solid. One night, I was jolted awake by a loud, rhythmic scratching coming from inside my bedroom wall, right behind my headboard. It wasn't the sound of mice. It was too deliberate, too strong. It sounded like something trying to claw its way out. I sat bolt upright, my heart pounding, listening to the relentless scratching. It went on for what felt like an eternity, then abruptly stopped. The silence that followed was even more terrifying. I could feel a presence in the room, a heavy, suffocating weight. I pulled the covers tighter, my eyes darting around the darkened room, convinced I wasn't alone. A cold breath brushed against my cheek, and I stifled a scream. I sat bolt upright, my heart pounding, listening to the relentless scratching. It went on for what felt like an eternity, then abruptly stopped. The silence that followed was even more terrifying. I could feel a presence in the room, a heavy, suffocating weight. I pulled the covers tighter, my eyes darting around the darkened room, convinced I wasn't alone. A cold breath brushed against my cheek, and I stifled a scream. I knew, with a chilling certainty, that whatever was in my apartment, it was no longer content to just whisper and move objects. It was getting closer. The next morning, I was a wreck. Bags under my eyes, hair disheveled. I looked like I hadn't slept in days. I called my sister Emily, who lived a few states away. Emily, always the practical one, listened patiently, offering logical explanations for everything. I knew Emily didn't believe me, not really, but just hearing a familiar voice, a voice of reason, was a small comfort. Emily suggested I come visit for a few days, get away from the apartment. I agreed immediately. I needed to escape, even if just for a little while. As I packed, the whispers returned, louder now, almost a chorus. They seemed to emanate from the walls themselves, from the very air around me. I tried to ignore them, stuffing clothes haphazardly into my suitcase. Then I heard a distinct, guttural growl from the living room. It was low, menacing, and undeniably real. My blood ran cold. I froze, my hand on the zipper of my suitcase, listening. The growl came again, closer this time, followed by the sound of something heavy dragging across the hardwood floor. It was the same scraping sound I had heard in my nightmares, the sound of something large and unseen moving through my apartment. Panic seized me. I didn't even bother to close my suitcase. Grabbing my purse and keys, I bolted for the door. As I wrenched it open, a blast of icy air hit me, carrying with it the overpowering scent of decay and something else, something metallic and foul. I glanced back into the apartment, and in the dim light I saw a shadowy, indistinct form, taller than a man, hunched over in the living room, its outline wavering like heat haze. 2 pinpricks of red light, like malevolent eyes, glowed from within the darkness. A silent scream tore through me. I slammed the door shut, fumbling with the locks, my hands shaking so violently I could barely turn the key. I ran down the stairs, not daring to look back, not stopping until I was out of the building and on the street, gasping for breath in the relative safety of the morning light. I never went back. I left everything behind, the furniture, the clothes, the memories. The landlord called, of course, but I never answered. I moved in with Emily, eventually found a new job, and slowly, painstakingly, began to rebuild my life. But sometimes, late at night, when the house is quiet and the wind howls just right, I still hear the whispers, and I know with a chilling certainty that some things, once awakened, never truly go back to sleep.